2L by g sine theta. This expression represents the time taken by the body to travel through a length L on the inclined plane. Types of friction. Objectives. To know the knowledge and understanding of the concept of friction. To know the knowledge and understanding of the types of friction. Frictional force is an important force in day-to-day life. For example, it would be impossible to walk on the floor without friction. One would not be able to hold on to a glass, write with a pen, or do even the simplest kind of work for that matter. Read more to know about the 3 types of friction. Introduction to the 3 types of friction. Friction may be defined as the self-adjusting force which comes into play tangentially between 2 surfaces so as to oppose the relative motion between them. However, if the applied force is large enough and is applied constantly, the relative motion can take place under friction with an acceleration produced by the net force. Friction is of 3 types, namely static friction, dynamic or kinetic friction, and rolling friction. Static friction. Consider a block B, which is resting on a horizontal table. Let a small pan be attached to the block by means of a horizontal thread passing over a smooth frictionless pulley. Initially, when weight in the pan is 0, the body does not move because the applied force due to the weight in the pan is 0. The body does not move because the applied force due to the weight of the pan becomes equal and opposite to the force of friction between the table and the body. When the weight in the pan is increased, the body may still be static. The body does not move because the resultant force on the body is 0. The frictional force is equal in magnitude and opposite in direction to the applied force P and is tangential between the 2 surfaces. This resistance encountered by a body in static condition while tending to move under the action of an external force is called static friction, F. Static friction is equal and opposite to the applied force. When the applied force P is increased, the frictional force also increases equally until the body starts moving. When it is about to slide on the table, the static friction reaches a maximum value. Any further increase in the applied force makes the body slide on the table. The maximum value of static friction is called limiting friction. Dynamic friction or kinetic friction. When the weight in the pan is gradually increased for a particular value of the weight, the body starts moving. The applied force overcomes the limiting static friction and sets the body into motion. In this condition, motion of the body is resisted by another friction called dynamic friction or kinetic friction. The resistance encountered by a sliding body on a surface is known as kinetic friction or dynamic friction or sliding friction. The body moves with acceleration due to the resultant force on it. If the body slides with uniform velocity, A is equal to 0, the resultant force on the body should be equal to 0. In other words, the applied force required to keep the body moving with uniform velocity under friction is numerically equal to the value of kinetic friction. The quantitative difference between the static and dynamic frictions is shown in the variation of frictional force with the applied force in the graph. If the body is in static equilibrium under friction, it is called static friction, and if the body is sliding under friction, it is called dynamic friction. While the static friction is always equal to the applied force in magnitude, the dynamic friction is equal to the applied force in magnitude only when it is sliding with constant velocity. While the static friction is always opposite to the applied force in direction, the kinetic frictional force is always opposite to the direction of the velocity of sliding. Rolling friction. If a wheel or a cylinder or a spherical body like a marble rolls on a horizontal surface, the speed of rolling gradually decreases and it finally stops. The resistance encountered by a rolling body on the surface is known as rolling friction. Laws of friction. Law of friction, formulated on the basis of wide range of experimental researches, can be presented as below. 1. Friction between the two bodies does not depend upon their areas of contact. 2. Kinetic friction, Fk, between two bodies does not depend upon the magnitude of their relative motion. 3. Friction between two bodies depends upon the nature of the surfaces in contact. 4. Friction between two bodies is directly proportional to the normal force, normal reaction between them. Thus, F proportional to N, where F and N represent friction and normal force respectively between two bodies, or F is equal to mu N. The constant of proportionality, mu, is called coefficient of friction. Expression for coefficient of static friction, mu S. Coefficient of kinetic friction, mu K. And coefficient of rolling friction, mu R, can be written as below. Mu S is equal to Fs by N. Mu K is equal to Fk by N. And mu R is equal to Fr by N. Mu S greater than mu K greater than mu R. Fs greater than Fk greater than Fr. Pushing and pulling of a lawn roller. Objectives. To understand the proper way of using a lawn roller, the role of friction in that case. Pulling of a lawn roller. From this diagram, the normal reaction N is equal to mg minus F sine theta. F is equal to mu N. F is equal to mu of mg minus F sine theta. P is equal to F cos theta minus Fp is equal to F cos theta minus mu of